Good morning and good morning everyone, and welcome to Facebook Live on our Love Racing platform. Well, I know we didn't talk last week, but over the last couple of weeks there's no shortage of news, and as we head closer to our relaunch of racing. So just a couple of updates. As you're well aware, we have targeted the 3rd of July to resume racing, and it's great to see horses back in work, some jump outs around the country. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll have 3 sets of trials at Foxton, Tirapa and Rangiora. And the question is, I know we flagged it a couple of weeks ago, can we come back earlier? It's still on the radar, and we'll get a feel for the number of entries we get for trials and get an understanding of the number of horses that are around the country to determine whether we can go back earlier. But further updates as we go forward over the next couple of weeks. We've also been working with the Breeders Association with the Pearl Series, and we do want to continue with the Pearl Series. It's an important scheme for fillies and mares, and just encouraging people to enter their horses by the end of May for the next series. We also got some feedback a couple of weeks ago around, can we program any Pearl races in the July period, July this year, and we are going to do that. There'll be 6 races programmed in July, so we are listening, and thank you for that. And we do recognise the important contribution that owners and breeders make to those schemes in the nominations of those schemes. You will have noticed this week there's lots of publicity around the Rita changes. Really important that, and that has impacts right across the business. And it's not an easy task to restructure a business and take cost out. And I know Rita management and the board have been working hard, and also not easy for the people that haven't got their jobs either. So we've got to respect that and support those people. The Racing Reform Bill, as we've indicated, very supportive of the process that the Minister has implemented to have 2 sets of reform delivered in some new legislation in the period of 15 months is really outstanding. And the advice we've got is the Select Committee will report back by the 8th of June. And hopefully that we can have some new legislation in place on the second reform bill before the election. The last couple of weeks, you've seen a release of draft race dates for 2021, encouraging clubs and to feed back to Rita by the 15th of June. Also, up in the Waikato, good progress on the construction of the all-weather track at Cambridge. The civil works have been completed, and we're targeting a date to complete the track surface in August, which means hopefully trainers can start to use that facility late August, early September. Earlier in the week, we also had the board make a decision that left the 1,000 guineas and the 2,000 guineas at Riccarton. Now, there was considerable work undertaken with a wide range of stakeholders while the country was in lockdown on a proposed calendar for the first quarter of the 2021 racing season. And at the time, we had information that there was on how the travel restrictions might play out and the potential that COVID-19 had on the country. And we made those recommendations with the information we had at the time. Subsequent events, with the loosening of restrictions and the hope that by the time we resume racing, that we'll be operating under level 1, led the board to decide to leave the 1,000 and 2,000 guineas at Riccarton. The board, Riccarton also understood that the likely impact on the cost for owners, so we'll be providing travel subsidies for those 2 important Group 1 races in November. So let's now go to the questions, and the questions that we've got from a range of people today. They're once again really broad, and thanks for your input. So Christine's asked, why don't we have more racing at Riccarton in the Christmas and holiday racing season? Well, in short, Christine, Canterbury have their Cup Carnival, which is an important Cup Carnival for the whole of New Zealand, and it has the opportunity then to recover. Its last race meeting it has prior to the end of this year will be the 4th of December. It is a Christmas meeting. but very much that holiday period is about the tourist trails and the community venues, and racing is programmed where the people go. So whether it's down Otago or it's the West Coast, they're the places that people are away on holidays when we want them to enjoy thoroughbred racing. Christine also asked the question, what's happening with the all-weather track at Riccarton? Well, planning's underway. As you're well aware, the government announced some funding for that track, and the engineers are scoping out that project as we speak. Emma's asked a question principally around synthetic tracks and business plans, and why don't we wait until Cambridge is up and running? They're all good questions, and just to put some clarity around that, the investment in the 3 synthetic tracks across New Zealand was all part of the Massara report, and we're very fortunate the government has made available funding for these tracks. And it's synthetic tracks, or what we refer to them as all-weather tracks, aren't new to racing. They're extensively used across the world in Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia and the UK, and have been doing so for more than 10 years. And it's important, one of the key platforms for the use of the synthetic surfaces, or the all-weather surfaces, is principally to give trainers a surface in that winter period for training and trialling and ultimately racing. So it does a couple of things. It reduces our loss when we have to cancel a meeting on a grass track. It gives grass tracks a rest through winter. It gives punters a consistency of surface, and it saves owners some money. So they're basically the reasons. They're all part of the thinking and the part of the venue plan process that NZTR went through, and ultimately John Massara made that recommendation to government. And a fantastic contribution the government's making to these venues. Emma's also asked, how many probationary apprentice jockeys are there currently in New Zealand? Well, Emma, we currently have 7 probationary apprentices, and your question is, what do we need to do more to encourage those? Well, we have that Ride to Time program over the past couple of years, which has been great when it comes to raising awareness among young riders about what it could be to be the first steps in the career of a jockey or a track rider. So we need to build on that. We realise that's not the only program we should be running, but that's a good question, Em. Thanks for that. Irene's asked a question. Free entry to people. Can New Zealand have this NZ Supercard that gets you into all minor race meetings? Well, it's a good question, Irene. What we've got to be conscious of, the clubs, that is the club's revenue, and the clubs already do a great job in providing free admission to nearly all midweek meetings across the country. So there's already a recognition by the clubs and providing free admission, and clubs do provide admission charges for the larger meetings. But it's a good question, and it's a question we can put to our clubs to say, is there a super card that we can work together? But it's an important revenue stream from for the clubs, so we can't have that disappearing. Paul, how much will stakes drop in the new season? Well, there's been no mentions of stakes to this date. Well, once again, I know there's some people say you're working with Rita. We are working with Rita. We'll get some guidance on our funding in the next, by the end of June, and by early July, we'll be able to give some guidance on what the stakes matrix looks like. We've got club funding, stakes matrix that we have to get finalised, and Rita are in the final stages of putting together that important budget to see what money can flow to the 3 codes of racing in New Zealand. Jimmy's asked, with less presenters on track, why not bring back the judge's call? Well, the judge's call does exist. What is important is that when that can be broadcast off track, I'm sure it will be by trackside, but you've got to realise trackside are running a busy racing program, jumping to races every 2 or 3 minutes. So the judge's call does occur on track, and if there is ability for trackside, I'm sure they'd pick it up. Alice and Deborah have asked, when can owners attend trials and jump outs? Now, I appreciate we've got a changing landscape. Under level 2, we are going back to closed door racing as we were in March. And I understand it's been frustrating for owners not being able to go to the races or go to trials or jump outs. What we want to do, we need to meet the government's expectations. We've got a club meeting this afternoon where we're going to talk to the clubs about a collective view. It's no use having separate arrangements in separate tracks across the country. We need to be united, cognizant of the of what we do going forward. And if we're going to have closed door racing under level 2, we can't be inconsistent in our approach or any policy setting. So more information to come as we talk to our clubs over the next couple of days. But thanks for your patience. Rob's asked, with all the cuts to Rita around radio and TV shows, what are we doing about Love Racing? Well, Love Racing's a platform that takes content from different areas. It's an important component of building out the profiles of our participants. As I think I said before on one of the Facebook Live chats, we do have when we are racing, we do have 75,000 unique users a month that come to the site. It has racing information. Could we do better in providing more racing and punting information? Of course we could. And I think based on the things we're starting to hear around what Rita won't be doing and the things that as a code we will need to do, it will mean we'll need to build out some functionality on the Love Racing site, whether that's live vision, more information for punters. And, we've got to acknowledge we've got 2 young people that are doing a great job uploading content on a regular basis. We have a business called NZ Thoroughbred Marketing that we contract to that provide news stories about horses, Kiwi bred horses that may be racing in Australia, horses that are racing in New Zealand, and providing insights from trainers and breeders. So it's an important outlet for us to develop the sport. And we realise it's got to be cost effective. But as we come out of mainstream newspapers, as will be the case, we need platforms to develop our heroes, our trainers and jockeys and our horses of the sport. Jerry's asked a couple of questions. What will it take for Avondale to play ball in the reforms? Well, what's important here is we're in a consultation period with all our clubs on the proposed race dates for 2021, and those consultations finish and gives the clubs the opportunity to feedback by the 15th of June. But what we have said, and NZTR has been very firm, every club has a role to play in the future of thoroughbred racing in this country. And we all need to understand that. Next question from Jerry. Are you happy with the performance of Rita to date? Well, having been here for a number of years and seeing what has evolved under the Rita model, there has been some really challenging decisions in very challenging circumstances. And we all, from the board, from NZTR board, right across the industry, the model needed to change. So you can't on one hand complain about what's happening and then on the other hand also say you need to take cost out. So the Rita are doing the best they can in a challenging environment. The model needs to evolve and change. We're advocating for that. The steps that have been taken are a good first step, and we're looking to engaging with Rita further on, working together with the codes and the wagering operator to build out future revenue streams. Tony's asked a couple of questions. Has it been decided if Maidens will have their own races, or will they have to race against 65, 80 or even open horses under the open nomination system? In a perfect world, yes, and that'll depend upon the number of horses entered for the distance of the race. If we get sufficient numbers of maiden entries, we'll be able to run maiden-only races. And the second question Tony's asked, in the new rule, horses will only be allowed, this is the new racing policy that's been put out for July, in the new rule, horses will only be allowed one trial before racing going to be permanent, or will common sense prevail and trainers be left to decide what is the best plan to get horses to race? So, Tony, you're the trainer, and we're not trying to tell you how to run your business, but what we are trying to do under the policy in this ramp up of racing is to get as many horses racing as possible. And we always said that racing policy we put out needs to be flexible, and we're going to learn a lot in the first 3 or 4 weeks, and if we need to change, we will. But we are trying to ramp up our racing after being shut down for 5 weeks and horses being put out in adjustment paddocks. So, we are trying to learn as much as we can. Tony, all I ask you is bear with us. You're the trainer. You know how to train horses, and I absolutely respect that. From Aaron, Aaron's asked, with the intention of closing tracks in some of the regions of Marlborough and the East Coast, for example, what will NZ Racing be putting in place to keep those regions from losing interest in the industry and continue to bet on racing? Well, one of the driving issues around not issuing a licence is no local horse population, which makes the economics really difficult for owners in the industry. So we have to remember, as I said before with the question that was asked about Avondale, we are in a consultation period. We have got till the 15th of June. And then certainly, how do we build out a presence for racing in those regions? It's a really good question, and we haven't got all the answers to that yet. Michael, once again, Michael's asking some really good questions and challenging questions, and clearly passionate about thoroughbred racing. So Michael's asked, what has Rita done to retain, or what input did we have to retain on-course broadcasting and connecting the punter to the wider audience? Clearly, the costs associated with those activities and those programs have been a Rita cost. So, it wasn't our job at early doors. Rita had to make those decisions. So we respect that. We're now engaging with Rita on what the changes mean around on-course presenters, on-course tote services, race form, and more the code will need to find solutions in partnership with the wagering operator. And they're discussions that were happening yesterday, happened the day before, and we've got meetings in the coming weeks. Michael's also asked, now this is another important one, because I can give you some knowledge that leads to some of the reasons the decisions have been made by Rita in these areas. Michael's asked the questions around on-course betting options, and why are we just going to digital, and why are we taking out why have we taken away the old model? Well, the facts are the clubs across New Zealand on-course face-to-face betting turned over about $30 million. And at a yield of 16.5%, that gave a return to the industry of $4.8 million. The cost to generate that $4.8 million, from Rita, it was $4.1 million, plus the club's cost. The clubs have to pay for the tote operators, and that's, north, that's another potentially $1 million. So when you add up the benefit versus the cost, it wasn't working. So we need to find a new solution. And that's what we're working with Rita on at the moment. So, Michael, they're good questions, and I hope that puts some clarity. You can't keep running that old model and losing money between the clubs and the industry. So a decision had to be made. It needed to change. It's outdated. Now, how do we take self-service terminals, digital platforms, and build out what a future on-course model could look like? There's some other questions coming through. Will the punters on course in July be allowed on course? Okay, so under level 1. I would hope under level 1, yes, but under level 2, no. So we'll have closed door racing, and that's what the position is today, and we'll provide further guidance once we get information from government. It's really important here. I mean, we are dealing with multiple government departments. We have to get sign-off from WorkSafe, and we're not going to get in front of we're very fortunate the government has ticked us off and allowed us to race. So that's very important. So we need to be in lockstep with the government, and Rita is that interface into government for us at this point in time. Raywin, December meetings pre-Christmas would encourage companies have Christmas dues at race meetings. Twilights would be great. Have you considered this? Yes, there are meetings scheduled in the calendar for the Christmas at the races and those twilight meetings, and they are very much a part of the social fabric of New Zealand racing, and an important opportunity for clubs to have race meetings and encourage businesses from their local communities to enjoy a day or an evening out at the races. Steve Ridley, updates on the $1.7 million of bad debts. Yes, we are. Stephen, we are getting those debts down. the debt level is 1.7 million. That is not true. We are collecting money. We have got people ringing outstanding debtors. So trust me, that's happening. I think Mary's doing a great job here with some other questions. Is there Sean Jenkins online? If there are enough maiden nominations for races in July, will they run maiden races? Yes, Sean, we will. Narendra, would there be owners allowed on course under level 1? I think I've just answered that one. Mark's asked the question, why haven't you taken more of Massaro's advice on how to a better New Zealand racing look like, as he's done for New South Wales racing? Well, what we're finding is change can't happen quickly. In racing over the last 12 to 18 months, we've seen the Rita, the MAC board with the government implement a number of the recommendations in the Massaro review. We're heading in the right direction. At NZTR will continue to advocate for the full adoption of the Massaro review, but you can't do these things in 12 or 18 months. They are long-term planning horizons, and we've had COVID hit us, which has impacted every New Zealand business, and we're coming out of that now. We're ramping up with our racing, and we're on the road to recovery. Jim, when will NZTR look at an alternative revenue stream like levies on stallion fees and levies on exported horses? Well, there are levies on exported horses, levies on stallion fees. You'd have to say that the stud masters and the breeders in this country do an amazing job supporting clubs in sponsorship deals. The reality is you can't do both. So I think, and what I see coming out from Australia, I think the New Zealand breeders do an amazing job. And through the Breeders Association, the contribution that stud masters and breeders make are very good, and that's my feedback, Jim. Brian, will there be improved trackside coverage for spring and summer racing? We had a meeting yesterday with Rita on how do we present our key racing times of the year, and how do we work as codes and clubs. And I know clubs have got some great ideas on how we lift the promotion of racing on track when people are allowed back on track. How many presenters do we use? What does that mean for trackside? So those plans will evolve over the coming weeks or months. We are putting a working party together of clubs, NZTR and Rita, to work through what that looks like. And as more information comes to hand, I'll share that on Facebook Live. When will pods be used on course, Barry? Discussion yesterday, and as I get more information to hand, I'll share that with you. Steve Ridley, no, Steve, the sum was at 1.7. I'm not going to continue with it. You've asked me that 3 times. That's it. All right, we are cognizant. We have to create, we want people doing the right thing, and people who don't pay their debts, they either come to an arrangement with NZTR, or there'll be provisions put in place where they won't be able to transact with NZTR. All right? And I'm happy for you to ring me offline and I can talk to you about that, mate. Thank you. So I think I hope that's been useful this morning. And I've got one more question. When will group and listed race schedule be finalised? Well, we'll off the back of the decision this week to keep the 1,000, 2,000 guineas at Riccarton, there's work being done on that at the moment with our clubs and our stakeholders, and that'll be out in the next week to 10 days. And also, that won't be a prize money matrix. That won't be known until probably late June, early July. But anyway, I hope that's been useful. Thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of the week, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Cheers.